Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Lamb. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Welcome to Silverline Silver Sunday, this Sunday on June the 9th. How is everyone doing tonight?
Doing good. Pretty good.
I got to change my little thing there. I'll do it while somebody else is talking. I am Roland Mann. I am your host, and I am joined with I got to stop saying this. I offended someone. The usual gang of idiots, right? Who was that?
Oh.
It was Mad Magazine was usual gang.
Mad Magazine. Thank you very much.
That's rude.
So, and of course, I am joined by Mr. Tom Mason. Buck Rogers versus Flash Gordon. Place your bets.
Place your bets. I'm going. In honor of our guest, I'm going with Flash because nobody cares about Buck Rogers.
Wait. You said what? Who did you say? Who are you going with?
I'm going with Flash Gordon.
Of course.
And of course, go ahead, Tom.
I'm done.
All right, and of course, regularly joined by Mr. Thomas Florimonti, Lord of Nothing.
That's right.
That's what it says. Say hi, Tommy.
Hi, Tommy.
And Colors Supreme Silverline team up, Mr. Roberta Conroy. Hey, Roberta.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
As always, I love the blur effect on your background there.
It looks like it's going fast.
Yes.
He is moving fast, right?
Like changing dimensions or something.
And always, Mr. Mike W. Belcher, that man in the mask guy. Say hi, Mike.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Doing good.
And today we have a special guest with us. If you read his name, you're going to have a hard time saying it. So thankfully, he has on pretty much all of his social media how you say it. Mr. Dan Schkade. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, you may not remember, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, but me and Thomas Florimonti, we met you, I want to say it was 2 years ago.
Would that have been at Pikeville?
It would have been at Pikeville.
Yes, it
That would
absolutely.
be
Yeah.
5 years ago.
That's right. Was that what? How many years?
5.
No
But it's
way.
been good. Those years don't count because it was COVID, so it was only
That's true.
2 real years.
Yeah, we
Wait,
would
was it
forget
really
about that.
5?
Yeah,
I've
But no,
lost all
I-
sense of time.
right.
Wow.
But no, I recall.
Excellent. Yeah, it was we loved Pikeville. We loved going up there. Mike
Did
was
Roland
always
have a mullet then?
Oh, you got to keep it fresh. Got to change up the designs every movie so we can sell more action figures.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. All right, but so before we get into grilling you and asking you about your life and art and of course Flash, a con report. I got it ready. Wait, I said it. No, I gotta say it right. So there we go. Con report. Me and Tommy went to Tampa Bay.
Oh, yeah.
Comic and Toy Festival
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza yesterday.
That's not what it was called, but close enough.
Oh, I think it was just a comic and toy show in Tampa. And I'm not going to tell Tommy's business, but I will tell you, within 5 minutes of the show, Tommy was ready to pack up because he's like, "Hey,
Yeah,
man,
I know. I'm done.
I've already made money. I'm ready to go."
And I had a little headache or something going on, so I was ready to go.
Yeah, Tommy. For those of you who don't know, Tommy had a bunch of art that he sold. Tommy still got art. He found like 80 pages.
I'm
in his
gonna
garage.
put it up soon. So if anybody's looking for some of that sweet Ultraverse art, I found a monster stack, 80, 90 pages that I don't know where they came. I did them, but I don't know where they came from because I thought they were gone a long time ago.
How good does it feel to find one of those phone books?
I know. I tell you,
He did. Yeah, they were in the corner, as Elvis would say, weeping all alone, right?
It's nice to know how well you take care of your stuff.
I know it's weird, right?
I'm a collector of original art. I put it in a pile and then I forget I have it.
I did not think I had it, and I got what I was wanting to get for it. It's going towards my new bike. So,
right.
Yeah.
At least he didn't throw it on the floor and walk on it, right?
No,
Right.
that's what Tom would have done.
Cut it in. Well, I don't draw, so I have no respect for my own art.
So it was a fun little show, but we did learn that that it was going to be the last year. The show runner said that he was more focused on his health and his family, and this was going to be the last year. I don't think he was going to turn it over to anyone. I think he was just done. He was just done. So it was a fun little show. Tommy and I guess we've done it for a couple of years now. And
Tampa Bay Toy and Comic Expo.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it was. So it will no longer be there. So anybody else do a show last weekend or this weekend? This week? No,
Just
no
the one in the mirror, baby.
All right. Well, let's get right on to Dan. Dan, one of the first things we want to ask you is we want to find out your origin story, right? Creators who make comics have to have been inspired to make comics at some point in time. So what is the first comic you remember reading?
I remember it very clearly. It was an issue of this is 90s Superman. This is long hair. It was Adventures of Superman. I can't remember the issue title. Had a very iconic cover of Superman kind of arcing over the city of Metropolis, which was inverted at the top of the cover. So when you looked at it, you realized the whole thing was actually upside down, which as a kid, I found very, very fascinating. I remember my head doing this while looking at the spinner rack. It's a Christmas issue.
Okay.
Superman and Lois Lane are going through the Metropolis mailbag and, seeing what little good deeds Superman can do for people. And one of the people who's written a letter to Superman that year was a little girl who's like, hey, my dad has been acting really weird. We haven't seen him in a while. We just want him home for Christmas. Can you find my dad? Turns out the dad is an ex-LexCorp employee who went crazy because he was trying out a battle suit and it's got kryptonite in it. And Superman has to fight this guy to bring him home for Christmas. And just one of those simple little one and done issues. The last page is a character 6-year-old Dan's never heard of is coming back. Ooh. It was just like the perfect first comic book to read. And,
Nice.
Yeah. So exactly.
Did that comic make you want to pick up the next one? Did it make you want to pick up what did it do for you as far as you and comics, your relation with comics?
I think, because at that point, I was born in 1990, so this is the era of Batman the Animated Series, of we know
you didn't read the Ultraverse comics then.
Well, not then. Yes. But so I was aware of, like, I'm sure I had like Spider-Man underpants before I knew what Spider-Man was.
Yeah.
But I think what that did for me. Yes. But I think it made that important connection early on that there was this physical literary iteration of these characters. Like you can't. This is the first place my mind went, but like you can't buy the Chicago Bulls book. Like the Chicago Bulls is it's a basketball team. You consume that in a televisual way. Maybe you go to the games, right? Or you buy merch. But it made me know that when I saw characters on TV, that there was a written, printed thing that they came from.
Yeah.
And now in the modern day, kids who were born after 9/11, kids who grew up with the Marvel movies as the like main source of media of their childhoods, they don't necessarily have that same connection, I'm finding.
No, they don't. Yeah. You're right.
So yeah, that's what that did for me.
Yeah. So what comic do you recall? What comic was it, or at what point in your life did you say, "This is what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to make these things"?
I think that would have to be when I was, I think 11. Okay. I got this big. I still have it on a bookshelf over there. One of those big black and white phone book omnibuses of Essential Marvel, I think is what it was called.
Right.
It was the Essential Doctor Strange. The first couple years of the original Lee Ditko and eventually Lee Everett Strange stories.
Right.
And I remember just over one rainy weekend in Austin, Texas, just pouring through it. And because it was the first time I'd seen a comic like that in black and white. It was the first time. It's so accessible when you see it like that. It's not, it's not this fully realized thing behind a glossy cover. It's something that looks like you're supposed to like leave it at a bus stop. And there's something about that disposability, that lo-fi version of it, that made it feel really tangible. So that was when I started like making my own comics on like blue lined paper and using my mom's beige photocopier to like make short runs of them.
Now, so were you making? Did you create your own characters, or were you doing, say, Doctor Strange and Superman, and were you using those characters to tell stories, or did you have your own?
I did a little bit of both. It's funny looking back to see what characters I chose because they're pretty off the beaten path. Like I did fan comics of Tintin, Cyber Six, Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, and the latter of whom crossed over.
I don't even know Cyber Six. Who's Cyber Six?
It's a Brazilian, I believe, comic book series that was briefly a Fox Kids animated show when I was growing up. So yeah, like just weird. I don't know why those are the things that spoke to me. And then when I finally did start making my own characters, which is around the Doctor Strange phone book era, they were a lot of them were like one-to-one versions of existing characters.
Sure.
Like,
of course.
Instead of Captain America, we had Captain Democracy, etc.
Right. Yeah. Great name. I'm writing that one down.
It's funny. I found a sketchbook.
Use it.
I was helping my mom move a while back, and she had this notebook I had from that period of my characters in it. So I was flipping through it, and remembering how dense the lore was. Like the characters like got married and had kids of their own who became new versions of the superheroes. It's like this like 100 years of solitude plus the Fortress of Solitude that I was just, and it's so clear looking at it that it's like, oh, I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in school. Now there's a Dr. Jekyll type character in the world. You can see just what media, young me was consuming and how that got put into a guy for Captain Democracy to fight.
Right. Yeah. Got a couple comments here. Pop says, hey, yo, what's up, Pops? Thanks for hanging out as always, Pops. Jeremy King says, Dan is the best. Thank you, Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
Nice
to see you, man. Thanks for showing up.
When I told him you're going to be on here, he scheduled his whole Sunday around you. So,
dude, he's the best. He is. Let me tell you, his last name very apt. That dude, I love that guy. Yeah,
Jeremy is the king. So I have a curious question for you. Now, so you said Austin, Texas. Were you buying your comics at Lone Star Comics by any chance?
No, at that point I was buying.
I know
my
they were
comics.
a big chain in Texas.
They were, yeah. No, actually, my main comic book source was Half Price Books.
Really?
Yeah, there was a Half Price Books next to my orthodontist office in this beautiful red brick building. It's still there, and they had a 25-cent comic book bin. And honestly, I think that was a big part of the magic for me. Like I talked about how at the end of that Superman issue, there was a sting of a character I hadn't heard of. That's all they had at Half Price Books, like non-contiguous issues of like an issue of Craven's Last Hunt,
great story.
Right. So you would get like nothing issues of, El Diablo or something next to like, I had like an Alan Davis X-Men, and going from zero to knowing about Alan Davis is a huge jump for a kid. And I think that was really helpful. I mean, I love how available media is now, how you can read just about any comic book relatively easily. Like you can find it online pretty easily. And I think that's great. Like not just buying a physical copy, but being able to read it on your Kindle. And I've done that. That's been great. But just like you can find any movie you want, any TV show you want, you do sometimes lose encountering something, on a Sunday afternoon trying to find something to watch. Like running into a weird, exactly, right? Like I wasn't going to see, I don't know, like Death Fist 2 or something because I was looking for it. It's because my friend Josh got sick and I couldn't like hang out with him. So I had to find something else to do. And that was definitely the case with buying comics that way. Second resold comics at Half Price Books is like, it's one thing if your very first comic gets to be Batman Year One or something, or something more appropriate for kids, I guess. Yeah. But it's something else to be thrown into just the wilds and you kind of get what you get, which is interesting. Like looking back on the weird lopsided sense of importance it gave me in terms of like the Marvel or DC universe. Like I really thought Blue Beetle was a more important character than he turned out to be.
Is it because you saw the Blue Beetle stuff all the time?
Yeah, like I mean, go figure. The Blue Beetle comics weren't being like hoarded by collectors; they were showing up at Half Price Books in Austin, Texas.
So how important did that make the cover for you then? If you're buying random comics, are you drawn in by the cover, or do you flip through it and see what the art looks like, or what pulls you at that when you're doing it that way?
It was all cover because they were bagged and boarded. And it was considered like poor form to open them because the Half Price Books was really quiet and they were in that like stiff cellophane. So like I didn't want to, exactly.
You're like an old man.
Yeah, the plunge right in.
Yes. So yeah, like seeing an issue, seeing the cover, like I think it's part of why I was drawn. It was like I would read modern stuff, of course, and then modern stuff was what was on the spinner racks. So I would be able to flip through the latest issue of JLA or Thunderbolts,
right?
But the stuff that I gravitated to in the half price books tended to be 80s, 70s, because those covers are just more compelling. We were getting into the era where we were having like iconic covers all the time.
Right.
And it's just not, it doesn't like bite into it. Oh, let me take a peek-a-rooney at this. Oh, that's gorgeous. Surprisingly, that's not actually the cover, but it looks exactly like that. Oh, and by the way, Carl Kessel, right, let me make sure I'm exiting out of this in a way that doesn't take me off the stream.
If you happen to exit the stream, just use the same link to come back.
Okay, I'm back. All right. Let me just say that Carl Kessel, he, of course, was a big part of the Death of Superman era. I mean, that's right. Where that cover's coming from.
Superman.
Exactly. He's a wonderful writer, wonderful inker, wonderful guy. He, when I was too young to read, my mom bought one of those like Death of Superman specials, like assuming that I would need it down the line.
Grow into it.
Right. And so one of the other early issues I read was an issue that he wrote. It's the one that it's the first appearance of Superboy. And then years and years later, I actually worked with Carl on Battlestar Galactica, and then I worked with him again on some of his Even Steven backups. And I was always late. I don't know if I did a very good job, but it was incredibly thrilling for me to be able to work with a guy who's not only like a wonderful professional, a good writer, and just like a good dad, like one of those revolting, like perfect people. But also to, I don't know, just to touch this creative element that began my career. It was incredibly cool. I can't see Carl's name and not talk about that.
Isn't that one of the cool things about kind of making the move from being a fan to working? Suddenly you're having the opportunity to talk with some of these people that you have admired. I hesitate to say idolized, but maybe idolized.
Well, certainly. I mean,
it's a pretty amazing thing. Got a couple new comments here. It's a question here. Jeremy says, I'm blushing. Hyper, thank you for stopping by. We love Hyper here. He says, Dan, how much do you love Atari Force, and how much has it influenced your work and your life?
Well, it almost doesn't bear mentioning Atari Force. It shames all other influences. That's it. That is a very cool comic, and anybody who has, veins with blood in them has to acknowledge the like incredible talent that is, Mr. Lopez. And like everybody, we're all very excited about that style guide coming out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Already got
I have a real short Atari Force story for you.
Oh, please.
A few years ago, this probably would have been, I don't know, Tommy, when's the last time we went to San Diego? No, it wasn't then.
It's like my parents telling the story.
That's
it's like I'm trying to think. When did I move my daughter out to California?
Was it Tuesday? No, it was Thursday. No, it must have been last Wednesday. No, it was
anyway. It was a few years ago.
2016, 2017. Because
something
before
like
I had my
one of our colleagues at Malibu is a fellow by the name of Hank Knowles, right? And Hank was at the time he was a VP at DC. And so going out there, I was like, hey, Hank, I want to see you, I want to visit you. And he says, well, come on down to the DC offices. I'll give you the tour and, show you around. So I did. Got to see Hank and Jim and a whole bunch of other people that I knew. Got to see the DC offices in Burbank, right? And he said, do you want to see the vault? And I said, what's the vault? And he goes, well, that's where we keep all of the comics. And he goes, it's in a literal vault. He goes, if the earth shakes and the building collapses, this vault will not, it's everything in it's going to be, it might be tossed around a little bit, but everything in it's going to be safe. And I'm like, well, yeah. Right. So apparently only like 3 or 4 people had keys to the vault. And he assigned somebody his keys. Said, here, go take roll and show him the vault. So we got to look, I got to hold what first Batman, 38? What was it?
Detective Comics 27.
Thank you. That one I got to not with my actual greasy hands, but I got to hold the notebook it was in, and the same thing for Superman, right? So I got to see all kinds of cool stuff, right? And as we were getting ready to leave, he reached the guy. It wasn't Hank. It was the guy who was doing it. He goes, "Oh, hey, you want some comics from the vault?" And I'm like, "Do I get my choice?" And he's like, No. We found these at when we moved from New York, and we don't really know what to do with them. So he handed me an Atari Force ash can. So I got an Atari Force ash can from out of the DC vault.
Atari Force ash can, interesting.
I never knew of such a thing.
So,
Nice.
yeah. So that's my both my DC vault story and my Atari Force story.
And when did the cops show up?
Yeah, as you're running off with
It's like this guy just hands out random comics from the vault every day. We just come and collect them and take them back.
It gave me something else, but
$100,000 comic book.
I
that
can't
you
remember
run
what
around.
the other one was. They gave me two, and I can't remember.
Depends
The
how much
only one I remember was the Atari Force because it was the ash can.
Well, it's the greatest lost comic of DC.
So yeah, well, that's my story. All right, so Pops and Roland, why do you have Roberta working so hard she can't enjoy the stream?
I am enjoying it.
There you go.
I love listening and working at the same time. It's so great.
Now
I just try not to laugh out loud while everyone's having a good story.
Roberta always contributes when she has a question. She is not shy.
No, I can pop up.
Jeremy
Roberta's
says
questions are way always better than ours.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're not, but thank you.
Jeremy says, Dan, I'm sure you get tired of being asked this, but how is the print version of Lavender Jack coming along?
Man, so the Lavender Jack print edition is such a strange black pearl of a project. It keeps on almost happening. It almost happened with 3 different companies, one of which got dropped because of COVID, one of which got dropped because the company got bought, one of which didn't work out because I said, actually, I don't want to do it with you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to do it with this other company, and that's the one that got bought. Yeah. So, one thing I will say,
we all do that every now and again,
right? There is currently, not me, but my friend Dan Schkade, who does a comic called Lavender John. There is a company there's a thing that might happen. So maybe his thing will take off where mine has failed. We'll see. I would love if he could get that.
And well deserving of it. Best wishes to your friend.
Thank you. I know you and I are both big fans of his work.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So how difficult is it to convert the webtoon format into a book format?
It's tricky. At every stage of this potentially happening, people have asked me, like, can you just turn us over the files and we'll do it? And I have to say, no, it doesn't work like that, because I'm and it's possible I'm overthinking it. It's not like that's never happened before, but I took Will Eisner storytelling techniques. Will Eisner, Harvey Kurtzman, and Matt Wagner would be the main storytelling philosophies that went into Lavender Jack.
Right.
And I adapted those specifically for webtoon. I used variants of those techniques to make it, at least to the best of my ability, really sing on the phone.
Right.
So you would need somebody who, it's like handing over your code to somebody else. Like you have to be able to explain what was done to make it that shape in the first place in order to make it comic book shaped again, at least to my personal satisfaction.
Right. Because I know Katie Cook has done it with her Nothing Special comic. She went from the webtoon format to a book, and it looks pretty spectacular, but you can tell a lot of work went into it to make the transition.
Precisely. And what Rachel Smythe has done with Lore Olympus, those are beautiful books.
Yes.
I have a copy of my friend James Maddox's book, Metaphorical Her, next to me. It's a beast, and it looks great. And that's the thing. Like I like Lavender Jack a lot. I know that the readers liked it too, and I want to make sure that it looks good as a comic, because after the nuke, that's the version that's going to persist. And I just wanted to be able to stand.
So it needs to translate, and needs to translate for your intentions.
Yeah,
precisely.
Scott McCloud, I saw him at the San Diego Comic-Con the last time I went with Tommy, whenever that was. And I use his book in my class. I use Understanding Comics in my classroom. And one of the things that my school has been trying to get me to do is they're trying to get us to dump all physical books, right? Mm-hmm. And they want us to go all digital. That's not available digitally. And so I asked him about, what's the possibilities of this being digital? He goes, oh, not until they can get it to look like I want it to look. And I'm not happy with any digital version of the book that I've seen. So until that happens, it won't be available digitally. So yeah, there's something to be said for that. Because you got to be happy with it.
Because I'm an old man, and I remember when I bought comic strip collections as a kid as a paperback book, they would take the comic strip and they would cut the 4 panels apart. Yeah. And they would sort of stack them in like a crooked stair-step order. I was like, well, okay, that's all that's available. So I guess this is how I'm going to read Broomhilda now or whatever. And, but it wasn't until, decades later when people who actually cared about comics actually put them in the format the way the artist intended them, that you're like, oh, I get it now. This is how they should always look.
And I'm not opposed to that strange experimentation. Like in the 70s, I believe, they put out these black and white paperback, at least one black and white paperback Spider-Man book. It was the Death of George Stacy storyline.
Right.
And it was, and when I say paperback, it was like, I can't recall what the right word is, but like a novel sized.
Yeah.
And so they would cut out, it was only like 2 issues worth of content, but it was like a 100-page book because it would be 3 panels on a page,
right?
Arranged in kind of a strange way like that. And it didn't totally work, but it didn't totally not work either.
Yeah.
It had something to it. That's actually how I first consumed The Death of George Stacy, because it was being sold in half-price books. And so I do think that there's something to be said for kind of knocking around and seeing what works when translating from one medium to the other. I just don't want Lavender Jack to be a casualty of the wrong move.
Right. Like, hey, Dan, we got a new way of printing books. Do you want to be our first guy?
Yeah.
Like, no, I would not like to be. I'd like to be the 10th guy. It's like I don't want to be the laser surgeon's first patient.
Right. And it's funny. I have a very like paternalistic feeling towards my audience. Like people love Lavender Jack. It for some readers, it's the first kind of American style comic that they've read. And I don't want them to buy a bad thing just because they want to support Lavender Jack. I want it to be right. Well, God, Tom Grummett is such a talent. Holy moly.
Hold on, I shared the wrong one.
He did. Carl and Tom did they did a long run on Superboy that I think is just fantastic. It's
that was a great run.
One of my favorite comic runs of all time, because it's set in the DC universe, but it's sort of outside the DC universe, so it can sort of stand alone. And it's really, really great kid type stories.
That's the man. That's my first comic right there.
All right, there you go.
And you know this because my copy has my name written on it in ballpoint.
Well, of course, because you didn't want your elementary school friends to take it from you.
Right? Well, and of course...
It is crazy with the point of view.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is.
And of course, speaking of the previous cover, Carl Kessel and Tom Grummett teamed up again on Section 0, which was a very good sort of Challenges of the Unknown style comic. And that's what I love. I love when people who work together on a big 2 book, like the wonderful work they did together on Superman and Superboy, get to create their own, I don't know, to drive that vehicle into their own territory.
Because I like to see what they do. It's sort of like I can see what they do when they're under what I consider to be the constraints of a corporate structure. It's because we all know that Marvel wants you to do it a certain way and DC wants you to do it a certain way, and that's fine. And when they succeed in those methods, that's great. But there's a certain point where it's like, okay, I want to see what you do when you take off the yoke or whatever, and the yoke of corporate oppression or whatever it's called, and go make your own. Tell me what's in your head. Go make your own thing.
Well, that's what makes some of those graphic novels, those early, like when we started using the term graphic novels, those early ones from the 80s and 90s so interesting is you had, big two comic book talent, guys like Jim Starlin, all of a sudden they're doing their own titles like Gilgamesh.
Right.
And you can see some of those creators having trouble breaking out of doing a Marvel or DC style comic.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have a lot of, Superman, but he's a Confederate, or like Superman, but he's like,
yes,
I'd buy that.
Right. and over the last 30 years or so, people have definitely, like, you have wonderful creators like Chip Zdarsky who are able to do really off the beaten path stuff and then also do Batman.
Right.
But not everybody is good at both. There are people who excel at doing corporate work, and it's not like that's a failure of some kind. Like being able to make these characters work, being able to have somebody say like it's clobbering time and have it not sound stupid. Like
they get to pay their mortgage, right?
There's a way.
That's not a bad thing.
It's not.
The creators that I always like are the ones who can take the corporate structure as it exists and the continuity as it exists and still find that pocket of weirdness where they can excel.
Yes, precisely.
And so, because Gerber used to do that a lot back in the 70s, where he would write,
the king of that.
He would write, like they plop him into the Marvel universe and say, well, this is the continuity, and this is what Captain America does, and this is what the Hulk does, and this is what Doctor Strange does, and Gerber would say, okay, I'm not going to do that. And so here's an elf with a gun, and here's a space virus, and here's a giant turnip or whatever, and he's going to bring his own sort of weirdness to it, and I think that's the sort of thing that's missing from his creator-owned work. Is he needed that previously existing sandbox to sort of make fun of the sandbox.
I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
I mean, then you look at creators like Roy Thomas, who, like you say, some characters are constrained by continuity, or some creators are constrained by continuity and characters. But Roy Thomas, man, it was like that part of A-Team episodes where they're like trapped in a garage and have to turn a car into a tank. Like that's him. He would take all this weird esoteric continuity and bootstrap it together. There's a writer right now, Al Ewing, who is exactly that kind of creator, doing stuff like that in 2024 with books like The Immortal Hulk and his Guardians of the Galaxy run. Anyway, all of which is to say, this is all. Everything is recycled. We're all reusing creative elements that came before us, even if we're doing, like, Mike, I don't tell you this enough. I really like Man in the Mask. I really like the Astro City Batman Year One, just plain old nice storytelling.
You just made Mike's year.
You did. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we might not see Mike on this stream again.
That's right.
But no, like this is like we all paint with the colors that are given us, and it's what we do with those elements that makes it sink or swim. And I know people. I don't know. I know people. I'm going to say this, and I can walk it back if I have to. I know people with a lot more like resources, help, corporate backing than you do, Mike, who put out work that does not have the heart that yours. And I don't mean heart like, oh, it's Rudy, he can be on the team. I mean, like, there's something about comic books that speaks to people that actually creates like an emotional connection, but also just like. Like you know when someone's caring, you know when a street performer is just trying to make rent, and you know when a street performer is like, I might just have this bit of sidewalk, but this is my Bonnaroo. And anyway, I don't want to. I get embarrassed when people say nice things about me, but I just want to say that you can tell when somebody actually has it and you have it, and that's always been nice.
I have no words because again. I just do it, and I'm glad it comes across like I really want it to.
Well, yeah, you just do it. You're not trying to.
No, I'm
I don't
not
know. to get
not
laid
forced.
at Rose City Comic Con or something. Like you actually.
Hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, there's nothing wrong if that's also what you're doing. If that's only what you're doing, I've got words for you.
Binary choice.
But no, I don't know. I just as I kind of look ahead, I'm like, okay, if I would love to do Flash for a long time. If I can't, what comes next? It makes you think about what does and doesn't matter creatively. Like not just what you enjoy doing, but like, I don't know, if we're not doing something that makes us feel the way that I felt when I was going through Half Price Books, quarter bins, then what are we doing?
I think that's this is my 2 cents here. I think that's what most of us as creators, it's what we want, right? I tell people all the time, I say, look, when you read my book, what I want at the end, when you close that book, I want you to be able to say, you know what, that was fun. I'd like to do this again. I'd like to see what comes next, right? I don't, that's what I want. I want you to, as a reader, to say that was fun. Where's the next one?
Yeah,
but I'm not done.
Exactly. I'm not done.
Right, yeah, I'm not done. That's right.
That's such a good way of putting it, Roberta. That's like the perfect. It's not just I wonder what happens next. It's I'm not done.
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what gets you.
Hyper, can I tell him? I'm about to put
That's
your comment up. Can I tell him who you are? So, because you're not using the same. I know who you are. You're not using the same name as you use on Twitter. He will probably recognize your
Is that
Twitter
Big Five?
handle. Oh yeah, you know Big Five.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who
Yeah.
that is.
So,
Kirk?
yes, it is.
Hey, Kirk.
Wait, it might be a secret identity. Oh,
I'm not supposed to say.
Oh.
So Hyper says, someday I hope to have a Sergeant Rock by Dan. And he said, Dan is pretty awesome, in case y'all don't know. So,
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate that. And
I didn't do it. Hyper. They did it.
Sergeant Rock is he's one of the best comic book characters ever. Like,
there's no telling how many Sergeant Rock pieces Hyper has. I've seen some of them come through our crowdfunders.
I love that. That's wonderful. I should. I mean, my goodness, you've been a fan of mine long enough. I should do you a Sergeant Rock on principle.
Oh, there you go. We love Hyper here. Yeah. So not that I have anything to say about your business, but I encourage that.
I'd say I would love to. I mean, listen, I'm a professional artist. I like jobs. I like getting jobs.
Of course.
But so I would love to be involved in a Sergeant Rock project at some point. Like ideally one.
Here comes a campaign from Hyper.
DC, listen up.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He's wonderful. And a Sergeant Rock in World War II. Like I'm sure they could do a cool one where it's modern day. I bet someone's really talented who will do that and it'll be great. But there's something about it'd be like doing Conan the Barbarian in the modern day.
Yeah. But you know what? If you're going to do Sergeant Rock, you want to draw World War II tanks and planes and evil Nazis, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
well, and it's not just the people and the cars, but it's also that environment. It's those German forests. It's the beaches. It's the if it's not in, like I can't see Sergeant Rock in Afghanistan. Like it aesthetically, it's like seeing Dracula in Tucson. It just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, you can only come out between 2 and 3 in the morning.
Hyper said, don't get Tom started on the Dinosaurs for Hire Rose City Comic Con after parties.
Because the thing about setting Conan in the Marvel in the modern universe, or putting Sergeant Rock in Afghanistan over there, is it just feels like it's novelty stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
It feels like a joke where it got out of hand in the office and somebody said, "Okay, let's do it."
Right.
It doesn't feel true to the character of as it originally was intended.
Feels like a silly 6-issue miniseries.
Right, and I'm not against that. if you want to do that, if you want to have your fun with that character, that's fine. I'm just not along for the ride.
Yeah. I mean, that's
why. Is it kind of one of these problems where you get so invested in the character that it actually belongs in the setting and you just don't want to wrap your head around it?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, I do think that we can't be so afraid of a setting that we don't try something new. I mean, I think a wonderful example of that, and I actually don't know what my example is. I just said it, assuming that one would land. Here we go. Actually, I have one. Potentially the best example of this ever is Captain America. He was he was a 1940s character. He was and all of his iconography was based around World War II. And we know this because they tried to make him fight communists and they canceled the book.
Right.
So then Stan Lee and Jack Kirby decided, well, let's not just have him still be around. Let's make a narrative decision that he's been in ice. We're going to do the man out of time thing. And that made him relevant forever. Because always, like, no matter what Avengers story, Captain America story you're telling, they'll be doing Captain America comics in 10, 20 years where Cap was unthawed right after COVID.
Right.
You can do that story forever. I think you shouldn't be afraid.
COVID, there's no one around.
Yeah, that's right.
Where is everybody?
But in that case, for instance, in the Captain America case, they took the thing about Cap that was relevant, which is his 1940s personality and his patriotism, and they carried that forward into the modern era. And so they remained true to the character, even though the setting changed.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's great. And I think the same way they did with Nick Fury over time as well.
Actually, Nick Fury is a very good version. But of course, love Nick Fury. But of course, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stories are genre-wise completely different from like I'm sure you could do what's an equivalent? I'm sure you could do a story where like Miss Tree like became a teacher at Hogwarts or something. Like you and so now there's this hard as nails like detective lady who's teaching potions, whatever. I'm sure that would actually be pretty cool, pretty fun. But we've just like completely upended the toolbox with only this woman's personality being the through line.
Would it'd be sort of like if the two hobbits from Lord of the Rings open up a detective agency.
And again, nobody wouldn't buy that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, we are, and I think
You'd buy it, but it'd be novelty, right? It'd just be that.
Yeah, you would do it because it's fun, or it's it might be a funny thing, but for the longevity of the concept, it's like, well, that just feels like a side quest.
Yes, that's fun, but how long, right? It's like, okay, this is kind of fun, but does that particular fun aspect have more than 6 issues worth of it, or
Well, it's like when your company gets a new CEO and they make a bunch of changes, and you figure, well, how long is he going to be here? And then it's
well, that's actually something I thought about when I was asked to pitch for Flash Gordon. Was
hold on, give me a second, I'm going there.
Hey, was like
you caught me off guard.
Segue here.
It was.
We're gonna get demonetized already.
Well, I was asked to pitch for this property, and so I had to come up with what my take was, because either I assumed or they told me that they were interested in doing a new continuity. They were definitely interested in doing a new take, and the brief I was given was very like, assume everything's on the table, assume you can change whatever you want.
Wow.
Give us something. And again, I wasn't offered the job. I was asked to pitch for it.
Right.
I mean, eventually I was offered.
Still, that's kind of cool, though, right?
I'm just doing it pirate style. Yeah, no, it was incredibly cool. Like when I received the email,
not everybody was asked.
Exactly.
They weren't. They were not asked.
My email must have gotten lost.
Yeah, right. I was sitting there thinking, I didn't get an email.
But when I was asked, I had a big think about like, well, what is this property? That not just who is Flash Gordon the character, but why do people enjoy this thing?
Right.
Because even Batman isn't a character so interesting that people will show up for him no matter what. Like, it's the milieu, it's Gotham City, it's Robin, it's the Joker. Like, there's this whole other thing. And so what I landed on was, while the Dan Barry strips are great, while the Flash Gordon strips that take him to other parts of the galaxy, that take him back to Earth, that take him to the future, like, those are all, they all have merit, of course, because they're made by talented people who care. But, like, the next thing people think about when they think about Flash Gordon is Ming the Merciless. They think about Prince Voltan. Like, they have, well, the first thing I think about is the Queen soundtrack. But after that,
I was waiting.
Well, that's what Roland thinks.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
And so that became my approach. Like, let's not recontextualize Flash in, like, let's not, I don't want to take him off Mongo. I don't want to bring him to a new place. I'm not going to do some kind of stranger in a strange land thing, because that's already,
you'll lose all of his hardcore fans.
Well, exactly. Like, rather than yeah, goodness. Well, that's also the thing, is like, this stuff hooked people in 1939.
Right.
I mean, I'm doing a Hawkman storyline right now in Flash Gordon, which meant I went back and reread the original Hawkman stories, because I read through the first 10 years of the strip before I pitched.
Wow.
So I went back and reread the original Sky City story, and that was 1934. That's when the comic launched. Like, wow, cool. Ming, the Lion Men, all of Zarkov, Flashdale, the Hawkmen, and a couple other big things besides the Lizard Men, like a bunch of stuff. That's year one. and so something really hooked people way back then. And so rather than being like, okay, well, how do we reinvent it for a new era, or how do we cater to the young, spry people who've been fans of it this whole time? You think about, like, how do we just, like, put chrome on these wheels? Like, let's not reinvent them. Let's make it new. Let's make it shiny, and bring in, like, the same 15-year-olds who fell in love with it in 1934 can fall in love with it again right now.
Yeah.
And I think to a degree we've achieved that, at least some of it.
I agree with that completely, because I think to go back to your Cap example, it's the same strip in the sense that it captures the essence of 1934 Flash, but it doesn't feel like a 1934 story in a 1934 character. It feels like a 2024 story in a 2024 character.
I would agree with that.
The old stuff.
That's certainly what I was shooting for. I mean, I'm a big fan of believing that these characters, these long-running characters, Flash Gordon, Superman, Green Hornet, whatever, they're still around for a reason. They're still cool for a reason. Yeah. And so you don't have to treat them like, counterintuitively, you don't have to treat them like they're special. You don't have to treat them like you need to respect them just because they're there. You just have to present them doing cool things, which they've been doing for 100 goodness years. Yeah. And people will react to them because they're cool.
Yeah.
Whenever you have to put people on a pedestal, like, Superman is the reason we hope. Like, no, he's not. He's a strong guy who lifts cars. It's fine. He's a nice man that can fly. Like, you don't have to. I love this My Adventures with Superman cartoon they have out right now, which is made by, like, entirely queer 30-year-olds. Like, it's young people making Superman stories for young people. That again is just a nice guy with a secret identity who does good deeds that are heavy. And
the Fleischer cartoons are still my favorite. Superman.
They're wonderful.
Wait,
please.
Well, if you look at the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, the one that many of us consider the real Superman movie, right. One of the things that he does is gets a cat out of a tree for a little girl. That's like one of the first of the three things that he does when he gets his powers. So it's not necessarily, he's not this high pedestal guy who is going to save the world all the time. It's like, little girl got a cat in the tree. Here I am.
Exactly. And when he gives it to her, it's not, there you go, be careful. He just gives it to her. He's like, bye. Zoo.
It's done.
Yeah.
He's got like 34,000 more cats to get out of the Metropolis streets.
Yeah. But he's not going to let the number of other things he needs to do be a justification for making this girl feel unimportant.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing with Flash is, again, we can't get away from the Queen song. It's like it's in the DNA. My Twitter friend David Propose is doing Space Ghost right now at Dynamite. He's doing a great job.
I don't have that one. Sorry.
That's funny.
That was a good scene.
Right? And we kind of had the same issue, which is as soon as I say Flash Gordon, people think the Queen song, and as soon as somebody says Space Ghost, they think Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Right.
Right. But you can fight against that, or you can use it. And for me, I listened to the Queen song a lot. I'm a big Grant Morrison fan, so I did the thing of like, all right, let's meditate on it. Let's listen to it over and over and see what we learn. And the thing that I landed on, and this is simple. It's so simple. It's almost like childlike, but it's the "He'll save every one of us."
Mm-hmm.
And it's the every one of us that became like the mantra for me. It's like, this is a guy who, all things being equal, approaches every situation with a hand outstretched. Every person is his brother, no matter what planet they come from, no matter what species, gender, whatever political ideology. Like, Flash starts from a place of how do we get along? Right. And then if the person turns out to, be somebody who uses their power over other people, okay, it's knuckle sandwich time. But Flash never starts from that, because he is, at the end of the day, there for every one of us. And
he's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
I saw that in this week's. Bro, do you want to go ahead? Yeah. I saw that in this week's run of the strip, where, and by the way, is Dale okay?
Oh yes.
He can't tell that.
Is that the Hawkmen are about to take Flash and Bach, basically come with us, and Bach's like, I'm ready, come on, I'm ready to go, and Flash is like, no, chill out, I got, we could, trust me, go along with this, it'll be fine.
Zoltan's our guy.
Yeah. It's like, so he's not agitated enough to fight first.
Exactly.
And he is for every one of us, because remember, at the end of the day,
we are going to get canceled off of you.
No. So a trivia here, Dan, that I don't know how many the rest of these folks know. When I got married, we used the wedding march from the Flash Gordon soundtrack.
Oh wow!
As my wedding march.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Holy cow!
When I asked my wife, she was like,
No.
And then she's like, yeah, okay, that's different, right? And so of course we got married in a church. So I had to when I told the pastor what because he asked about it, I said, no, I've got a soundtrack I want to use, but you probably want to hear it first. Because I said it's done by Queen, and he goes, yeah, let me hear that before we play it. And so it has no lyrics. It's just the wedding march. And of course, if you watch the movie, you don't get the full wedding march, right? Because they cut it up, for them. But if you listen to the soundtrack, the wedding march is complete from beginning to end. That's what we used for when I got married.
Well, it's quite a lovely theme. It's very triumphant.
It really is.
Yeah.
So my bride marched down the aisle to me to Brian May's guitar. So
she loves you.
That's awesome.
There is no doubt.
She's still with me. So
that warms my heart. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah. So
now I know
what
the problem is.
When you
I
talk
didn't know
about
what it was. Now I know what it is.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Queen soundtrack. It's like, yeah, man, I listen to that thing so many times. I can quote all the little lines to you in between the songs, and yeah.
I saw the craziest thing on Twitter today. One of the most nuts things I've ever seen.
Really? Something crazy on Twitter?
I know, right? Because I've got a rule. I don't engage with any post that doesn't directly connect to me, that doesn't, tag me, retweet something of mine. Because I think it's important that people should be able to talk about things amongst themselves.
Sure.
It's considered a bad look. But I will search just quote unquote Flash Gordon on Twitter just to see what people are talking about.
Sure.
And it's mainly people talking about the movie. Sometimes it's me. And I saw this post today, somebody saying like, I don't like Queen. I don't. I don't think they're any good. I think they're overrated. But that Flash Gordon soundtrack slaps.
That's cool.
Right?
That's cool. Yeah. Who's got the next question?
Well, I think Hyper Potato had one.
Oh, did he? I missed it. Sorry, Hyper. Oh, yeah, he sure did. Hyper said, "Forgive me if this was already covered, but does Dan work on Flash digitally?"
Flash is completely digital. Well, actually, it's not entirely true. It always begins on. I have some on my desk here. It always begins on note cards.
Scribbles.
I have every week I have the Sunday strip laid out like this, and the weekday laid out like that, and I cross it off as I do it.
That's kind of cool.
That is
cool.
Good idea.
Notes always on these little guys. I have them just in my pocket all the time, and I'm a very visual. I'm a very visual writer, so I'll have things like right now with the arc we're doing in Sky City. I have.
You had to hide the spoilers.
Yeah, I didn't prepare this for presentation, but I have this like stack of cards where it's like locations and then like what characters are in the location.
Yeah,
and I spread them out on tables and I move them around because Flash Gordon, my goodness, has so many characters, and it's not even. Like my comic Lavender Jack had a lot of characters, and I was sometimes criticized by my editors for putting too many characters in an episode because it makes it harder for me to draw, which is why I'm late always. But you can't like do it if there aren't a lot of characters. It's part of it'd be like if you did The Hobbit and it was just Bilbo and Gandalf. Right. You need all the characters, and so to keep track of them, to keep them filtering in and out of the strip, to kind of create the illusion that they're always there, even though there's usually fewer than the main cast in every week. I have to spread these cards out and like move them around. And
mine's a little more old school. It's just
see,
because it's essentially an ensemble thing, and much like TV, you've got to figure out. I need my A plot. I need my B plot. I need my characters. I need to set up something for the next episode, for the next storyline that's coming up.
Precisely.
You got to make sure you throw the characters that everybody wants to see. You leave somebody out.
Well, Thomas, that's the other thing, isn't it? Like you do have to meet audience expectation.
Yeah. You do.
In fact, I love writing Flash. I love drawing Flash. A guy who's just purely good and does good deeds is good for me psychologically to work with.
Yeah.
But there are times where I've like found a plot line I really like and then gone like, oh wait, what's Flash doing? He needs to be in this.
Gotta bring him back in.
Usually when you see a story with Bach where Flash is with him, that's what happened. It's like, oh, right, Flash.
Well, also they make a good pair.
They do.
They play off each other well.
The first Flash Gordon thing I did was, thank you, by the way. The first Flash Gordon thing I did was this. They had an anthology called Flash Forward, where they hired artists to do just a one and done non-canonical Flash strip. Right. It was 40 different art teams, and I was one of them. And my one was about Flash fighting a Dragon Man in a gladiatorial pit. And it was from the Dragon Man's perspective and him just kind of realizing what a bum rap he'd been given, like having to kill people for an emperor who doesn't even know his name. And right before Flash is about to knock his lights out, Flash just says, "Hey, I'm sorry about this." And like as his like horns being knocked off, he just thinks like, I kind of needed to hear that right then.
That's it.
and so I took the basic idea for a character and I made him into Bach, who's in the official comic now. And I realized that when you team up a guy who just wants everybody to be cool with a guy who is not used to people being nice to him, you come up with a pretty good pair of friends.
Yeah.
And now Flash has a buddy that isn't a super scientist or a queen or a woman he's in love with. Like he has just like my main social outlet is there's a bar I go to. Like I have you know my dating life, my relationship life. I have people, professionals, whatever. But I just have like casual bar friends. And last year, somebody spread a pretty nasty rumor about me that wasn't true. And my friend Patrick, who's just like a big union man, apparently somebody tried to sell that to him. And he's like, I don't know who you're talking about, but that's not Dan. And I was like, holy cow, that means so much to me. Thank you for saying that. And so
it's Cheer. You go to Cheers.
I basically go to Cheers, yeah. And they play old movies. It's the coolest place.
Dan!
Which, by the way, is a great thing, meeting new people, having a place where people like know your name and think you're cool.
Yes.
It's a very good way to convince people you're not a creep. But yeah, like I wanted to give Flash that guy, just like a guy who's like, listen, I might know much. I don't know much about much, but I know this guy's on the team.
Yeah. Well, it's a classic dynamic. Because Star Wars Rebels has that dynamic, and I can't think of the kids animation show. It's the one with Lion-O.
The Thundercats.
Thundercats
has a dynamic like that. One of the characters. But not to the extent that Dan does. But it's just it's a good pairing of sort of not necessarily opposites, but guys who would get along under any circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could go to a bar and hang out, and they would still be buds, or they could just go and fight evil and be buds. And it's just and you want. You wouldn't have to say, oh look, I got to leave my bar friend behind. I'm going to fight evil. I got to go pick up my fighting friend.
There's something so like I'm real into like queer culture. I got a ton of queer friends. I got a ton of trans friends. I think it's a really cool area, and I think that it's opened up some cool storytelling opportunities. But because of that, I've done a lot of thinking about like, what does masculinity mean? Like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to have like male friends? What do male friendships really mean? And the thing I've landed on, and it's this cool, to me, kind of a uniquely male thing. And I'm willing to re-examine this down the line. But for now, I think it's a uniquely like kind of male stranger thing, where if somebody shows you just like a little bit of understanding, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of patience, you're like, yeah, I'll fight somebody for you, sure.
Right. It's the team mentality, right?
It is.
You're on my team, right? We're teammates. I'm gonna slap you in the butt. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Exactly.
In the old era, it would be like we're on the same team because we have the same enemy.
Right.
And I think the way to look at it now is sort of like we're on the same team because we're very similar and we get along. And if you're in trouble, then I'm in trouble too. And if I, and so it's a sort of a twist of the way it used to be, and I think it's better.
I would agree with that, because the previous way you're talking about is kind of the central tension of our story, our overarching story in our version of the Flash Gordon strip, which is here are all these nations, the Hawkmen, the Frisians, the main capital, the Arborians, who all united against Ming the Merciless, who is, I think we can all agree, a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like he's what they call a moral deus ex machina.
Yeah.
Like whatever you have to do to overthrow Ming is worth it because he's the devil.
Yes.
But once he's gone, it's like, okay, well, how much do we really have in common?
Now
like,
what?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the enemy of my enemy is my friend only lasts as long as your enemy's around.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
But this other type of friendship, which is you and I want the same things, not just like politically, but for ourselves. You and I want to be the same people. You and I see the world the same way. That's such a stronger type of friendship. It's what the humans all have with each other. Dale, Zarkov, and Flash, I keep gesturing out of frame. Dale, Zarkov, and Flash, they all, have emotional, moral, ethical goals that are united. And throughout my arc, they find characters like Bach, like Bones Blalock, like classic characters like Prince Thun and Prince Baron. Like they find people that they're aligned with, not just in opposition to a bigger thing, but because they, I don't know, enrich the people they want to be.
Yeah, because then
Can I add a layer to that? If,
Yeah.
if I may. I think I've also found that it tends to add tension, but it also tends to solve things when you have enough of a difference in their personalities that they learn from each other, because they would not handle it the same way.
Right.
There's a
Yes.
lot that they enjoy the same outlook on, but then the things that they differ their outlook on, they go, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And
Because if they were
helps a lot.
I
if
love
we
that.
were all exactly alike, we'd be bored with each other, right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'd be playing the same games all the time.
Yeah.
That is true.
And getting the same score though.
Well, I think that's part of why I liked. I apologize for speaking over you. That's part of why I liked Bach so much conceptually when I was like figuring out whether or not he worked in the strip. Was Flash, Dale, and Zarkov are all nice people who are civic minded and like to listen to each other, and they're basically, they belong on the the Starship Enterprise, right? And so, and I didn't want to change that. I didn't want to make one of them the jerk, right?
Yeah.
Dale is kind of secretive and Zarkov's a little erratic, but that was in the strip from the beginning. I didn't create that. But I thought, okay, well, a guy who is gruff and pessimistic and suspicious, but is like, I love the show Community, and the main character, Jeff Winger, is a lawyer who is like very like, he approaches every situation like this, but he still yearns for some kind of connection.
Right.
I thought a character like that in this strip, somebody who like does want to be loved and accepted, but always is like, tensing against it, like trying to find the angles. That is a character that really brings a lot of color to the strip in a way that doesn't sacrifice any of the
other characters.
90-year-old characters, right?
Yeah.
Right. But you also get the feeling, maybe I'm projecting too much, but you also get the feeling from Bach that his relationship with Flash is like, well, this is the first dude that I could trust.
Yeah.
Like I've been burned before by situations where we just had common enemies or we just had one thing in common or whatever. But Flash is like, I'm gonna give Flash a little more string because something, I'm starting to trust him, and I think that it goes way beyond like just two bros.
It does, because Flash helped him out. Like Flash was like, hey, come with me, let's get out of this prison together. Flash helped him out when Flash had nothing to gain from it.
Right.
And it turns out down the line, Bach has become an ally. Bach has helped him out. But in that moment, it was purely just a guy being like, hey, I don't belong here. Neither do you. Let's go.
Right.
And I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about this. But that strip, Bach, for listeners who don't know, Flash and Bach were in prison together in this cave prison where the most rugged prisoners were made to have these like death matches under this big glass canopy. Flash and his ally Bones Blalock figure out how to crack through that glass to escape. And as Flash is climbing out, he reaches down to Bach being like, hey, come with me. And Bach, who's in prison because he rebelled against Ming and lost, as everybody did until Flash showed up, Bach is just like, no, I belong down here. And Flash says to him, is that you talking or is that Ming? And it gives Bach a second pause, and Bach decides to escape with Flash. So somebody posted online about this, about how their husband was going through an issue. Their husband was really doubting himself. And apparently they both read the strip. And this person's spouse sent him this strip as like, hey, is this you talking or is that Ming? And reading that, like, oh brother, that really got to me.
Wow, that's
right?
Well, I'm going to quote another line from the movie. I'm not your enemy. Ming is. Let's all team up and fight him.
Yeah. Exactly. Because Ming isn't just a guy with a goatee who I made less Asian. Ming is like Ming is the doubt that lives in your mind. Ming is the conciliation we give to our fears, to our negative beliefs about ourselves. Like whenever you seek that horrible kind of comfort that comes from being like, I can't do it, I'm not good enough. Like that to me is what Ming did to a planet. And what Flash is the bravery to not believe that about yourself. Like you can do better, you can be better, you are worth it. I'm the most like handsome buff guy in the world and I believe in you. Like that's what Flash is.
He's the hope.
He's the hope.
Mm-hmm.
He'll save every one of us.
Well, I have a dumb operational question before we leave off. Is that who is your boss on Flash? What do you have to go through to get Flash in the paper?
Well, thankfully, I'm given a lot of room with Flash. I think at this point they know that I'm not going to do anything too crazy.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to like have Flash look at the camera and condemn Israel or something. So I have an editor who's directly above me, a really patient, talented, detail-oriented person named Ailish Waddell. And then above Ailish is T, who is the main feature editor of King Features, who hired me, who is wonderful and very forward-minded, like really looking towards the future, into the 21st century.
Nice.
Of what these strips are going to do and be, like how we're going to make them continue to connect with people. And then above T is, I don't know, the Cthulhu-like entities that run Hearst. I don't know who they are. I'm sure they're very nice people.
They've done, and I forget which strips are with Wet Syndicate, but I know they reconfigured Nancy, and they reconfigured Mark Trail, which I think they've made Mark Trail a legitimate, interesting strip for the 2024s.
I agree with that.
And
I don't know who Nancy's with, but Mark Trail is King. That's Jules Rivera doing that, and T also hired Jules, which you all know.
Jules is doing a great job.
She is. I actually reached out to Jules when I was offered Flash to just ask her what working for King is like, and it gave me a lot of hope because what Jules said to me essentially was like they want somebody who knows what they're talking about to do this strip about not just adventure but also environmentalism. Like they want to connect with people, and I mean that's it for me. That's what all of this is. Before the job I did immediately before being in comics full time was I worked for Starbucks. I worked for in fact, I was working on a comic of mine in the lobby at Starbucks on my break when I got like discovered.
Wow!
Like a guy who knew Mike Richardson at Dark Horse saw me working on the comic, and that was my like big break. But at Starbucks, I feel so silly saying this, but the like mission statement they give you, the like mantra, the motto you're supposed to have as a Starbucks employee is creating positive, memorable experiences in the customer every day.
Oh, I thought it was just make drinkable coffee.
That would be more concise, of course.
Oh, okay.
Like that would be my edit. Like if I'm the producer, I'm like
that's the subtitle.
Well, it has to fit on the merch. You have to.
Right. But that to me is the philosophy of King Features right now. Like how do we every day give you a little unit of story, of perspective, of spectacle, like this little bit that I don't know makes your day a little bit richer. And I'm really excited. Like I say, I don't know how long they're going to let me do this, but even if it's just this first year, I'm really, really happy to have been a part of, I think, a quite cool movement in an art form that I don't want to go away.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does King let you know how many papers or what your metrics
What kind
are?
of circulation is? Yeah.
You know, as far as the direction you've gone since it started.
And maybe how do they count how does circulation count it now? Because you're not just in papers, right? You're online as well. Yeah. How does all of that tabulate? If you can talk about it, how's all that tabulate?
I've always been a little bit gun shy to ask about that because then they might tell me.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to know, right?
Yeah.
Right. But I do know that at least at the beginning, a lot of papers picked it up. I believe this is me saying something that isn't a known fact. This is just what I understood to be true. That at the start we were in 100 papers nationwide.
Okay.
And I do know that since we've launched, we're in some international papers. There's a Spanish edition
Nice.
in Guadalajara. There's actually this is so cool to me. There is a Gaelic edition in Ireland.
That is so cool.
Wow.
Right?
That is cool.
In fact, the Gary Maloney, the guy who's translating it, reached out to me on Twitter just to say he was doing it. And apparently it took him a while to find a Gaelic version of the word merciless that still had the alliterative M.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
You got to go to Oxford University and find that one guy.
Right.
So no, it's and then online I understand it's doing pretty well. I think it gains about 100 subscribers every week, which I think
Oh, that's great.
yeah, I think for the metrics we're dealing with, that's pretty good. I don't want to claim on it.
Well,
But yeah, no, I definitely think that it's doing well.
Yeah.
I definitely get asked about print editions all the time, so I think
There,
that's
that
a
was
good
the next
sign.
question, and Hyper asked that too, which is
That
like,
was my question as well, and that's what Hyper says. Hyper says,
the book,
Hey, there you go.
the book increases the audience. At least in my, I have no proof of this, and I don't have charts and graphs or anything. But my understanding is that the book increases the audience and awareness of the strip.
Well, I sure hope so. I think that this first year, that's my assumption, they would do a year because, my strip is very dense, but I think they'd still want to do about a year's worth of content before they put out a collection.
Yeah.
But this first year will be a very substantial volume. This will be Flash Gordon's From Hell this first year. And I think this is really something that'll stand. Flash has been around for 90 years, which is crazy to think about. 90 years. This thing's almost as old as Metropolis. Like this thing is. There are fewer people like alive today who were reading it when it came out than there are people who have worked on the strip.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so much material to cover.
Yeah.
I would love to think that a printed edition of this first year of my run on the strip would be something that anybody could read without any of that context, like an adventure able to be dropped right into, like
good.
Mad Max Fury Road or
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. Have you read the other books? Doesn't matter. Here you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Sweet.
the format with the Sunday page and then 6 dailies or whatever, it's perfect for the way books are made now for that kind of stuff. And so, and you can't put, as we all know, you can't put a comic strip on your bookshelf.
Right.
Because it's very ephemeral. It's one day at a time stuff. But a book is a book.
Yeah.
It's true. Plus, in a book, we can correct those. That 1 week where I called General Call by
Yeah,
accident.
it's something we talk about on the show all the time. It's one of the great things about dealing with the bland printing is that when you do your second printing, it's like, oh yeah, I can re-letter that now.
I can
Right.
fix that. That's right. That's right.
I can put the page out the way it's supposed to go.
I use capital with an A and capital with an O interchangeably. We can fix that.
That's the great thing about angry readers on Twitter is you can find out where you were wrong.
That's the thing. I hate them, but I love them.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Dan, we have taken up more time than than Mike probably told you we were going to have you on, but it has been great. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can we ask you to come back and talk to us again sometime?
I would love that. That would be.
I can say I know I still have questions to ask, and I'm betting Tom does.
The funny thing is we're sitting here before the show talking about you behind your back, trying to figure out who's got all the questions and who's going to talk to Dan. It's like we didn't even get to half the stuff. So,
well,
That's okay.
I know I can rattle on a little bit, so I'm sorry.
yeah,
about
no,
it.
it's good. It's good.
The technical side of how you put the book or the content together.
Right? There's so much.
I do
Oh,
it.
yeah, there's tons of stuff we could ask.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we're definitely going to ask you back.
Right
Yeah,
on. Well,
gotta-
I would love that.
Got a couple comments here. Hyper says, Flash is one of those special characters that my parents even knew. I cherish those guys now.
That's so
Cliff.
cool.
Yeah. Cliff, thank you for hanging out with us. Cliff says, I have never seen Flash Gordon on a shelf, and it would be cool to see.
There you go.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
If you remember a Flash Gordon book, your back hurts now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You know what?
I want to make a Flash Gordon book for people who just got HPV.
HPV? What's HPV? What is HPV?
Young people. Yeah. I want to do a Flash Gordon book that people will make TikToks about.
Okay, I got you there. All right. Well, Dan, hang out with us here just a second. This coming week on Tuesday, that Silverline show on Tuesday, their topic is how to create a compelling superhero. The team discusses how to create a superhero that isn't generic and can compel readers to buy the next volume.
They should just watch Dan's essay on how he created Flash.
That's right. On Wednesday, the Whammers are going to talk about old school versus new school, comic page layouts from the past versus it cuts off. I'm going to assume it means today. We're going to take a look at some old comic page layouts and compare them to modern Silverline books. And pull in some other interesting examples. So that ought to be interesting. That is on Wednesday. Next week, the host has failed to provide a topic.
But we know one thing we're going to start doing next week.
Next week. You guys need to tune in because we're going to be doing a live contest. Thanks to Tommy. We're going to figure out the details of it. We don't have all of them worked out yet. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to offer up, Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to offer up a piece of original art that Tommy is going to draw while on stream. Right, going to be working on.
It's going to be it'll be a Silverline character doing something, some movie, some TV show that I'm going to put the character in, and you have to guess while we're on live, and then we'll do a random draw at the end.
That's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
Hey,
so
you'll be able to. Can I make the random guesses?
You can. No, you guys don't get the. No, you guys get to help with hints, so that way our viewers can win stuff. We don't want you guys winning nothing. You got all the free stuff in.
Tom starts guessing. I'll have to pull out this power here. Wow!
Oh, there you go. So if they watched last week, the way that I was drawing, we're going to do that top down thing, and then I'm just going to sketch something out, and then
I had some good guesses last week.
You did. You were wrong.
Great
No,
guesses.
but I'm the one that knew what it was from, though.
He was intentionally wrong, I think. Hyper says, Dan has been a delight. Make him a regular. Well, we could have worse regulars, couldn't we? Absolutely. Been fantastic. Absolutely. Fits right in with the Silverline crew. Because, Dan, I don't know how much you know about us, but we are all about comics and having fun and making comics that everyone can read. Now I'm going to put you on the spot one more time.
Yes,
one of the things we do, we close out here and we say, "Make mine Silverline." Can I get you to? I'm going to focus the screen on you. Can I get you to say, "I'm Dan Schkade, make mine Silverline"?
All right, let's do it.
Can I get you to do that? Anybody
Yes,
else? Or anybody have anything to say before we get out of here?
Where is Dan going to be appearing? Is there a show coming up where people could bump into him?
No, I'm going to be in the chair I'm currently sitting in for the rest of my life.
All right.
So when you do shows, people bring the newspaper and you just sign the strips. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Oh,
You can bring it to my house.
We'll have to. We know some folks at Daytona Beach. We'll have to get. I think they're full this year, but we'll have to get them to reach out to you. Come down here to Daytona Beach. You can have a vacation at the same time you do a show down here.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Dan, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It has been a lot of fun, very informative, and let's do this right here. All right, Dan.
All right. So I'm Dan Schkade, and there's lots of things in life. Some are bitter, some are fine, but me personally, I'm making mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard it.